Hello, everyone. We have an epic show for you today. I am joined by two of the best guests ever, and they're going to show you their journey through learning Power BI. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Less Code, More Power. I am Sarah Critchley, and I'm joined by two of the most amazing people. And on this show, Donna and I always talk about learning and the journey of learning. It's never easy. And today I'm joined by Zoe and Joel, and they just have an amazing story about how they've taken a component of the Power Platform and gone through this tremendous learning journey. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Hey, you're always welcome here. So could you share with the audience just kind of Zoe, maybe go first and then Joel, you follow. Just kind of introduce yourselves, tell the audience who you are and what this amazing thing that you've done with Power BI.
Yeah, sure. So like you mentioned, I am Zoe, and basically I am a mental health therapist at a correctional facility. So I'm not someone you would typically think is into data management, or I don't necessarily use it as part of my everyday job, but it's something that I have always been interested in and curious about. I've loved playing around in Excel in my downtime because that's not nerdy at all. So I've done a lot of that, and Joel kind of picked up on some of that, and he was like, hey, do you want to try this? And we could make this whole series about it. So we kind of developed this idea about me learning Power BI from scratch with no tutorial videos, no instructions really at all. And just to kind of play around with it and see what I could come up with on my own, to kind of test how intuitive the programming is and things like that, getting the data, putting it into visuals. And then we also decided that we would kind of document that journey. So that's kind of how we got started on this. And then, of course, we ended up presenting on all of that at DynamicsCon, which was amazing, and it was a wonderful opportunity. So that's briefly a little bit about me, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, that's amazing. Zoe, I mean, I've got so many questions, but I need to hold off until Joel. Do you wanna like tell us what you did, right, to get Zoe so engaged and get her hooked on this journey?
Yeah, so I'm Joel Leichty. I've been consulting on Dynamics and the Power Platform for 20 years. And so actually last fall, Donna Sakar suggested that we needed to get more people into our nerd circles. And I said, well, Zoe's a good person to get into our nerd circles. She's a nerd at heart. So let's do it. Let's see what happens. It was also for me kind of an experiment. Since I teach other people Power BI, it was kind of a chance for me to sort of see what happens when you don't help somebody and just let them flounder a little bit. And it's actually been really helpful for me to understand a little bit better about how Zoe learned, and it's actually changed some ways I do consulting. So it was really informative from that perspective to go through this process.
Wow. So Zoe, from your perspective as a learner, but then Joel, it's amazing. So you didn't just throw her into the deep end, right? You didn't just say, hey, here you go. You kind of, as Donna would say, voluntold her, right? You told her to do the thing. This is totally Donna would love that I mentioned that. So kudos to you, Donna. But in terms of kind of that, it's actually kind of almost helped you, because I guess that we can have bias, right, Joel, in terms of we kind of have been doing stuff, and I think this is a human nature thing, that we do things the same for ages and we don't have the perspective because we're no longer someone new to the platform or new to the technology. So getting Zoe's perspective must have been really great.
Yeah, it was so helpful just to understand. And some of the challenges around data modeling has informed my consulting, because now I try to make sure that more of that's done on the front end before I ever do training. Whereas in the past, I may have done a bunch of training first, and then got more into the Power BI project. So it kind of flipped around my thought process for how to get new users that I'm working with as part of my firm into Power BI.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because the data component can be really difficult, right? I mean, Zoe, you mentioned this that you don't come from this background. Like you've not created data models for people, you've not done anything like this. So that whole kind of data component, not just like Power BI, like the visual side of things and representing the data, just the modeling piece was a learning curve. So before I kind of ask you a few more questions, Zoe, I want you to be the whole point of this episode and for the audience out there is that you're all got to be going through something. Like we talk about the Power Platform on the show and about how the fact that the learning curve is really like low, but there's still pains through learning, right? And Zoe, how many times did you want to give up? How many times did you get so frustrated that you were just like, damn, like why did I do this?
It was probably every single time I tried.
I love that. That's raw honesty, people. That is raw honesty.
I mean, it was like, well, each step I think that we took to advance, like I would take something that we talked about and I'm like, okay, I want to try it on my own now. And I would do it and I'd be like, well, this is dumb. I can't get it to work. Like it was frustrating because I couldn't like I'm a smart person and like you think that someone like that would be able to just figure it out. But in reality, I could really only go so far without Joel's help. And so then we would kind of talk about that, in the next series. But it was pretty much any time I sat down, it was something or other, whether it was finding the data to use, finding the format to use, then getting it in there, then finding the visualizations. Like it's kind of a nightmare. But once after going through all of that, then to look at what we did and our story, then I'm really proud that we were persistent in continuing to go on the journey and dig deeper into my skills and the project that we were working on.
No, that's amazing. And what did you do? So when you were in that kind of like pit of despair, I guess that we could all like, I think we all go there, right? When we're learning new things, like when you was in that, what kept you going, right? Because like you had Joel's support, like was it him being there to like ask, like help just be there with you on that journey, or like what else did you do to kind of get you out? What kind of kept you going?
I mean, obviously it was helpful to have Joel there. I would text him and be like, this is freaking stupid. I don't know why you're doing this. Like, I quit. And so he was able to kind of be like, hey, we'll talk about it, or like, let me look at something, or, whatever. And so he was kind of there for me, in my time of like actual, like, I want to stop this. He would kind of reel me back in and be like, okay, it's actually not as hard as you think. Like, here's some easier ways you can work around it. But other than that, I think long-term goals for me, learning this tool and having these skills will help me in my career. It's funny because actually after Dynamics Con, we got an email from the Department of Corrections, how they're rolling out this new training program on data management. And I was just like, oh, well, here's my time to shine. But so it's becoming new in my field. And if I just wanted to learn it so that I can have these skills and kind of build on that and build on my career from there. So that was another thing that kept me going, I guess.
What an amazing opportunity. Like you did that, then you get this email, right? Like it's kind of like, it's just funny how it opens up all these doors when we kind of push ourselves, and like the pit of despair is kind of worth it. And I guess, the other question before we kind of go and share the montage that you've made with the audience and really highlights your process, what would you recommend documenting the journey, like going through what you both did? Would you recommend that to others? Because you've mentioned a few moments ago that looking, when you look back, like it's easy for us to forget this process, like to forget all of the hardships, like when we kind of know it and everything. Would you recommend doing that for others?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think also us documenting this journey that we went on can show other people that it's okay for it to be difficult. And it most likely will be difficult. And, if you kind of know ahead of time, if you watch other people's videos of their journey or whatever, and you kind of get an idea of where there may be some bumps in the road, then you could kind of plan ahead or do extra research or whatever. But I definitely think documenting some progress along the way will help you to recognize all the progress and all the achievements that you've had that you might not have seen before if you're just looking at the start and at the finish. Or, if you quit along the way, then you'll never know. But yeah, I would recommend it to everybody because it's so important. And it's also important it was cool to do it with Joel too, so we could both kind of have this document of how we went on this journey. It impacted him as, someone who teaches, and me as a learner, recognizing, new things about how I learn and different systems and things like that. So yeah, I would.
Definitely. And Joel, you would, right? As Zoe said, as someone who teaches, would you say it's helped you get out of that kind of bias that we would traditionally approach our training with?
Yeah, and I think I don't know about documenting these things, but I think it's always good to reflect on what it's like to be brand new, because a lot of time when you've just been in the nerd circles a long time, it's hard for things to be new, and you kind of have a different approach to brand new things. So I always think it's good to reflect back to, remember the time when I when I first started this, and now what can I do? And that distance is usually a lot bigger than people realize, because they're, it's always incremental along the way. So so I think that's always very helpful.
That's awesome. I mean, it was one of our first episodes that Donna and I did. We had a guest that showed us all about Power BI, and our minds were just blown. Like I was just like, I could never make that in a million years, right? And I guess Zoe, you started that journey kind of in that similar space, right? Where we kind of have this almost disbelief. So I think this just by you coming on the show and sharing this is just an amazing story, because hopefully it's going to empower our audience to do the same. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and we will show your reel, like your montage. So Zoe has made this amazing montage of the YouTube, of Joel's and Zoe's YouTube series that's documented this process. So let's check that out.
Zoe, I was texting you the other day about Power BI, and you were like, why should anyone care about Power BI? So that's what I want to talk about today. The reason I thought it might make sense for you is because you were mentioning you were at work doing some magic with Excel. What were you doing, I guess, is my first question.
The regional director at my job knew I fancied Excel and asked if I would take a look at it. So basically, I was cleaning up a database, making sure that all the formulas and conditional formatting were the same throughout several tabs, managing thousands of lines of data.
You're like at an interesting phase for me, because you're like at zero. Like my career, I've learned stuff, but almost always it's been in the context of some work that I'm already doing.
If you advertise it as a well-developed skill, regardless of field you're going into, I think that's receptive to employers.
I think like the first step would just be to download the app from the Windows Store, point it at some marketing data, and try something. I mean, I'll help you along the way, like if you get stuck. But I'm kind of curious if you can just like do it.
Sounds good.
Welcome to another edition of this show that has no name. In the last episode, we talked about you getting started. This time, I wanted to talk a little bit and ask some questions about some of the struggles that you had along the way just getting started. I know that you had some struggles with was just the fact that you're a Mac user.
So we had to kind of find a workaround to where I could access a remote Windows desktop.
So the second thing that I know, getting access to data.
Due to HIPAA compliance, I could not use data that I was working with at work. Since I work in criminal justice, I looked at the Bureau of Justice Institute. Then you have to make sure you're saving and downloading the format that can then be uploaded to Power BI.
This data thing is an ongoing problem related to BI. So it was very interesting. Like it was like the first thing you ran into.
I think it's easier if you have some kind of data set in your possession that's in Excel, because that kind of transfer is more fluid. To like, I didn't know what a CSV file was. So you do have to do some research on even the type of files that are applicable for Power BI.
So what was the scenario that you landed on?
I think it was the example one that you had used about the facility addresses and the type of facilities.
How did you feel about pulling the data into the visuals and just kind of working with the data and the tools? Was that intuitive or was that a challenge?
It was a challenge. I pulled a couple of data sets about recidivism rates, but I couldn't get anything to work.
Basically, the data set wasn't designed for reporting.
Once I switched to using the raw data set that you had suggested, it was a lot simpler. I really liked how you could just drag and drop the title of what I wanted. So if I wanted type, I dragged it into the access or the value option, and then it would just populate in the graph.
Once you got past sort of the data hurdles, then it seems like you were just able to do more stuff. I think it would be interesting if I gave you a few pointers, kind of keep track of the pointers and, talk about those in the next episode and see how.
Yeah, I wrote, Joel, need more guidance.
Welcome to episode 3. Well, I'm going to share my screen and try to teach you the ways of the force. Just want to show you the ropes of Power BI, try to narrow it down from 183 buttons to the 10 buttons that you actually care about. You got this far before with your 3 tables. Get data would be the first step, and this would be the second step, which is this transform data button. This is Power Query, but this is for manipulating data. The main thing I want to show you is kind of like choosing columns, the fact that there's all these transformation options, and the custom column. What should we do next?
Well, I'd like the opportunity to kind of apply what, we kind of talked about today and see what I can kind of come up with.
Thanks again.
Thanks
for doing episode 3 and for being funny as always. Good luck.
Thank you.
Happy reporting.
Please welcome our next speaker, Zoe Leichty and Joel Leichty. Today they will be presenting From Zero to Minimally Competent Power BI Story. Please stick around after their session for a live Q&A.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we don't let our guests go without giving you homework, giving the audience homework, right? So Joel, you go first. I'm actually going to ask homework from both of you, so hopefully that's not a shock to you. Joel, please go first.
I'm ready. So I'm going to give everyone the same homework I gave Zoe, which is if you haven't already downloaded Power BI, I want you to go to the Windows Store, type in Power BI Desktop, download it, do something. That's your homework.
That's awesome. Like, technically speaking, people can just go do that, like, literally right now, right? We encourage you. We allow you to multitask right now. You can go ahead and do that. Keep us playing in your browser, and you can go ahead and do that. So, with that in mind, that's your homework. Thank you, Joel. That's epic homework, by the way. Zoe, your turn. What's your homework?
Kind of going off that, besides downloading it, you can also go watch our YouTube series besides the montage that I made. And Joel, and actually one of the series kind of goes over some sites that you can get free data with. And so you could kind of utilize that if you're looking for data to use when you just, after you download, then you can kind of find some data sets and point it at something and see what happens.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think one of the learning curves with Power BI is that it's blank, and people people are just like, what is this? Like, because the thing is, the charts will only reflect what data is in there, right? And the visualizations. So I love that you mentioned that. So we're not going to tell you where that is. You need to go and watch the YouTube series, and that will become apparent in the YouTube series. So I think that's awesome homework.
Perfect. That's
That
what
is
we like.
amazing. This is great. Well, thank you so much, Joel, Zoe. You've been amazing guests, and hopefully for the audience, it's really kind of given you empowerment and also just transparency, right? That I think we all internalize our own process, that we think this is just us when we go through this kind of journey. So I think the fact that you now have this YouTube series that literally documents their journey and their painful journey, right?
Yeah.
The pits of despair that come along this journey shows that we're all in this together and we all go through this journey. So Joel, thank you as well for being an amazing advocate and getting Zoe into this platform.
Yeah, thanks,
You're
Joel.
very welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show, and thank you to the audience for watching. So less code, more power.